We are speaking with Jojo Bowman, professional ballet dancer and Pilates instructor at the Royal Danish Ballet Gym, where she is currently working with soldiers returning from Afghanistan with polytraumatic injuries. Welcome, Jojo.
Thank you.
So first, can I ask you, what is a polytraumatic injury? What kind of injuries are you seeing?
It basically means multiple injuries. Generally, I'm working a lot with amputees, single and double amputations, and also with spinal cord injuries and some brain damage, and usually, primarily it's the amputations that I'm working with right now. And I've experienced many different injuries along the way, sometimes loss of fingers and damage to the arms, as well as the amputation to the legs. So I'm seeing new things every day.
Every day. And no soldier is the same as the previous soldier.
Absolutely
the
not.
Injuries don't match up.
Absolutely not, no.
Now, when you see a spinal cord injury, is that synonymous with loss of movement? Is that someone who's a paraplegic now, or no? Is that something different?
The guy I'm working with right now with the spinal cord injury, he was initially he was paralyzed. When I started working with him, he had recovered a lot of his movement. He still had a paralysis on his right inside thigh, which he still has now, but we're working more and more towards more sensory work. He's advancing very quickly in that, and of course there's the motor control, which is slowly coming, and we made a remarkable process with him. He was, last session I had with him before I came here, he was actually jumping on the reformer, which was quite...
Okay, I want to ask you, first, I want to ask you more about that work and just working with someone who was starting with you as paraplegic and now recovering motion. But first, how does a ballet dancer start teaching soldiers returning from Afghanistan?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was a lot of media attention almost 3 years ago about the lack of efforts for the rehabilitation for the soldiers coming home, and the Royal Danish Ballet Foundation, which is a foundation that the dancers ourselves started about 20 years ago. The chairman of that fund called me to his office to talk about if there was anything we could do to help, and I'm sat there thinking, we? You're a lawyer and the chairman of a fund, so you're basically saying me. And I was like, no way, this is...
Put on your pants, put on your gym pants,
exactly.
Get in there, help me.
So I was completely overwhelmed. I was like, I'm not good enough to do this kind of work. I work with ballet dancers with sprained ankles and basic injuries. I don't even know what a prosthetic leg looks like, let alone how it works. I'm not qualified for this. And we talked a lot about it, and it was very much... after talking for quite a while, it was more an approach of, is there anything we can do to help, to contribute? I'm not sending you out there to save the world, it's just to do your best.
So you decided, you felt you weren't qualified, but you still made the decision to, okay.
Yeah, I think
right?
a little persuaded at the same time of let's go out and see and offer our help and see. And I didn't in any way feel, I didn't know what I could possibly contribute to. I didn't even know what the system offered as it was. So it started at a very small level of let's just contact the hospital and see if they're interested in hearing what we have to say. So at that point, I went together with him and a fellow dancer who's nothing to do with Pilates, and we just sort of went to meet the army surgeon who's the chief of the trauma unit in the university hospital in Copenhagen, which is where the soldiers are sent back to when they come home from Afghanistan.
And what did the army surgeon suggest to you? Did he suggest right off the bat, let's do Pilates with these returning soldiers, or what was his thought? What was his thought that how you would be able to help?
He was, needless to say, he was quite skeptical. He knew nothing about Pilates. He's an older guy, a fantastic guy, and it was we came into his office, we sat down. I did a little presentation on what Pilates is, which he sort of sat back and looked at these. Said it looked like torture chambers with these Cadillac and these things. It's like, what is that? So he sat back very sort of pensively listening to what I had to say, and we kind of looked at each other, and then he said, do you want to see what I do? And I was like, sure. And he turned his computer around, and I watched the most gruesome amputations and body parts and this, that and the other, and just sort of took that in, and we sort of looked at each other with this mutual huge mutual respect for what each other does, but how do these two worlds kind of connect? So we sort of looked at each other for a while, and I said at the end of the day, if taking these boys out of a medical environment, taking them into the theatre, surrounded by ballet dancers in tight, sweaty clothing, can it go wrong? You know, even if it's just them getting out and seeing something else, being around other people.
Taking them out, I think that what you just said, taking them out of that hospital environment, that medical environment, and surrounding them with people who were, like you said, minor injuries, but using their bodies in a way that very few people can.
Yeah, but this is a funny thing. In the beginning, we had no idea. It was almost, you know, like you say, ballet dancers and soldiers, what on earth do you have in common? And funnily enough, when we brought them in, almost luring them in of come and see all the ballet dancers kind of thing, which is probably what got them in there in the first place. And actually what the head surgeon said, it was that moment he decided, yeah, you know, even if it's just making them smile, that's going to be you know, a good thing. So getting them in, and then funnily enough, really early on in our work together, we suddenly saw so many parallels in our, like the self-discipline, the complete dependency on your body. If as a dancer, if you're injured, you can't work. Of course, you can't compare dancers' injuries to what these guys are experiencing, but it's your identity, it's your everything, and definitely the self-discipline side of things was, we were really, we could really feel just bringing them into that environment. They were like, this is actually kind of feel quite a home here. This is a bit almost, you know, as it is in the military, where they're very structured, and you take a lot of hard criticism, and you have to get on with it. You have to fit into a group. You have to perform at high levels, and there were suddenly things along the way that we were finding interesting. We're sort of like, oh, actually, this isn't that different, funnily enough, from where they've come from. So
they came in for Babes in Tights.
Yep, that's how it started.
And
you can tell it's going to go well just from there, right?
And then from there, they found, obviously they're still coming, so instead of coming in just for the Babes in Tights, there's a resolution there. There's a finding of the similarities, like you said, but then of a method that's able to.
Well, this is what was really interesting, is for them, this was the most obscure thing in the beginning. You know, they are all about the global muscles. They're all about pumping, big pecs, big biceps.
Any young man.
Oh, absolutely. It's soldiers as well, and they're all, you know, that's what they know. So to come in, and they just were like, you know, didn't understand, you know, this is a bit light. I can't possibly put them on a light spring, and they're not really getting, you know, what's this going to do? And they were going along with it. They were so brave. They threw themselves into it, but they didn't really, they couldn't quite. And then they was, you know, oh, well, I'm sweating. You know, what's this? And this is how are you doing that? Because we had two of them come in at the same time, and they really would almost sort of laugh when we showed, not laugh, but they were very like, we show an exercise, they're like, okay, and then they get up and try it, and they're like, whoa, and the next day when I called up one of them to see it, and wanted to report back how they were feeling, he was like, I am so sore everywhere. I have found muscles in my body I didn't even know I had, and that was really for them to understand that it's all very well to look really good in with your big biceps, especially amputees. The last thing that they need, of course, it's nice to look good, but it's a bit like wearing an Armani suit and then you've got holy underpants underneath. It's like if the stability is not there underneath as an amputee, then what are they going to use their big pecs for?
Can I steal that analogy?
Sure, you can.
With everybody. I love that. The Armani suit. So tell me, you said you worked with them or still work with them in pairs. Do you work with the soldiers?
No,
in
I'm
pairs?
generally, it's a voluntary project, so we have a time versus space thing going on, that we have permission to use the gym after the dancers have gone home at the end of the evening. So right now it's we're going to work, coming home, putting our kids to bed, and then getting back on our bikes and coming back into the theatre to work in the evenings. So it's really who can get in to teach. Unfortunately, at this point in the project, we're not really working so much together with me and my partner Jessie, but there's so much going on that ideally one-on-one is perfect. There's a lot of hands-on that you need to do, particularly if you have different lengths in the amputations. You need to assist a lot on the shorter side, so it's really, really hands-on. So sometimes if you get two of them, we do it every once. Yeah, we do it every once in a while, and it's definitely possible to do it that way. But in general, it's easier, and I feel they get more out of it if we're one-on-one.
Tell me about the first soldier that you worked with.
That was
that first day.
That was terrifying. It was Christian and another double amputee, Mark. and it was very much us going to the hospital in our car, picking them up, putting the wheelchair in the back, and driving them over to the theatre. And we'd sort of, at that point, we were the first to say we weren't experts. We were just two, I don't know whether Pilates instructors, but movement specialists.
They were okay. They were with these awesome dancers,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
They were like, wow.
I think they didn't seem to mind, but it was more about what can we give these guys that's, we can use our experience as movement specialists, I guess, through our ballet training. Mm-hmm. Some things kind of made sense. There's a lot of balance, and of course we learn that a lot as Pilates instructors, but also as ballet dancers. We are expected to balance on the tip of our toes and turn around 3-4 times. So there were sort of elements of certain things that we could use from our own experiences. But again, we knew nothing about prosthetic legs. We knew nothing. Do we keep the legs on? Do we take them off? Do we even things down to them being in wheelchairs? Do we get down to their level? Do we stand up? Do we help them onto the machines? There were so many questions. And what was really fantastic is that we just got them in, and it was just sort of like we fed off each other, we followed each other. We really had a mutual trust very early on about where the boundaries kind of were, and I realised more and more to give them space to do. They could get up and down off the machines easily. They would jump on an orbit and scoot along to the next piece of equipment, and they
great.
found their way around very quickly. But basically it was very trial and error. The first session we had with them, we stuck to what we knew. We used all our knowledge from our education, from our experience, and we basically got them on the floor and just said, let's see what happens. And we had a basic line that we were going to follow, and just
And were you able to stick to that, or?
Yeah, we were. Of course, we ran into problems, and we were very. One thing we decided on before is that we were quite afraid to give them things that they wouldn't manage to do. Not because they weren't able to, but because in the beginning we used to teach with the legs on, because we still can do sometimes now. Now we know a little better, but most of our problems were with the prosthetic legs, getting them on the machine, and their legs would maybe get caught in the springs, and you're trying to get the shoes out the springs, and it was sort of practical things like that. It wasn't really that they couldn't do the movements, but those things we wanted to sort of get out of quickly, so we didn't spend a long time sort of fiddling with those things. But we had a sort of plan A, B, and C for most of the session. And we were 2 instructors and two soldiers, so we just sort of all fed off each other. It was really, really, they were so positive. They were walking into this completely new world, and they just went for it. And I took my hat off to them immediately that we even got them in the door, let alone they would try out these exercises.
At the beginning of the interview, you mentioned that you worked with someone who was initially either completely paralyzed from, it sounded like the waist down, but was beginning to recover that. What kind of exercises were you doing, or what kind of work was he doing on his own that may have assisted that recovery?
He was working in the, all of the soldiers when they come home, they're offered physiotherapy in the hospital, and we work very closely with them. We have a really good collaboration. We're very lucky like that because we're not affiliated with the military. We're not affiliated with the hospital initially anyway. And so now, just through approaching them, we've built up a really good relationship with them. And I quite often will go and visit them in the hospital and see the work that they're doing there, and then they will come and see what we're doing as well. So we can also have the same goal setting. We can also see what each other is working towards. So at that stage, he was working with a physiotherapy in the hospital, and it was a lot. They also do quite a lot of, they work one-on-one, and they do strength and exercises and everything, but they also have quite a big, there's a lot of importance on the social aspect of getting these soldiers to be together and to be around each other, and they do a lot of sort of social exercising, setting up even the Pilates foam rollers that they've bought since they've known us. They will set them up almost as goalposts, and they do all these things, shooting around on the floor on almost like skateboards, and they have to hit certain things, and if there's sort of penalties, they have to do certain thoracic extension or number of sit-ups, so you've got that kind of that feel going as well. So, but it's really become obvious that I think Pilates by itself is a huge part of their rehabilitation, but it definitely goes hand in hand with the rehab that's offered, and it's definitely, the two systems complement each other very much. You need the big strengthening exercises too. So
and then the social aspect also.
and then that as well, which in the beginning, when this project started, that was one of the things that the Royal Danish Ballet Foundation, the chairman, said to me, was this social aspect of it, which I never really got in the beginning, because it was very much for me, this is about physical training. So I was basing the physical side of it more than the social, but funnily enough, I really quickly realised the importance of the social side of things. All the soldiers are very different to work with, and really quickly seeing what each soldier needed. Someone can come in, Christian for example, came in the very first time, this is what I've got, possibly for the next 60 years, help me walk better. Okay.
Excellent.
Another one can come in and have so much pain that it takes a different route, a different journey, and it almost has a, without sounding too deep, it almost has a sort of spiritual level, the breathing mind-body connection thing that was just not in their vocabulary before.
Sure.
For somebody to experience that, and for the first time in many years experience movement as a source of pleasure and competence as opposed to pain, was a huge thing for him. So it would be a very different route with him, and then there would be another one who'd be having a really particularly hard time, and the session would have to go at a certain tempo. I would have to have him sitting and being comfortable and smiling before we began. It would never be like, right, let's just start, you know.
Let's just get to it.
It really was, it was really, really different from person to person what they needed.
Where do you see the project going? I mean, either where do you see it going, or where would you love to see it go?
love to see it
So
going.
the collaboration that you have with the Royal Danish Ballet, with the dancers, with the Pilates instructors, with these soldiers returning from Afghanistan. I guess ultimately, you know, the goal would be that there would be no soldiers returning with injuries.
Well, that would be nice, yes.
So we'll say that's our first one. That's our first goal.
Yeah.
If there are soldiers still returning with injuries, where would you love to see this end up? Or not end up, but continue?
Yeah.
How would it continue to grow?
I think my absolute dream, because we started this as two very passionate Pilates instructors, and that was our credentials at that point. We are passionate about helping these people, and I think we started, and then to reach a point of almost frustration of we need to know more, and this is where our work with Elizabeth Larkham started, where she was able to come and take us to the next level, and from there we've then been introduced to both Mike Podlensky in San Diego Navy Hospital, and with Harder in the Tel Aviv in the Veteran Pilates Center there, and suddenly we found ourselves in this kind of international triangle, and what would be fantastic, what our dream would be to open a international kind of knowledge center in Copenhagen, hopefully, where we have the resources to bring in these international, make a collaboration of these people, these experts, and really let that be a place people can come and learn more, and for us to be able to travel and become better people, cleverer people, and also maybe have the soldiers be able to go from to San Diego to work with Mike, or for vice versa, just to pick the best of the best and just all learn from each other, because sometimes it can feel quite lonely sitting in a gym by yourself with a soldier in Copenhagen, and suddenly...
and feeling like there's not a network or there's an assisted. So has anyone thought about choreographing for the dancers with the soldiers yet?
Why, you want to do it?
I do.
I'm sure they'd love
I'm volunteering for the job.
Yeah, no, we did joke about it as a fundraising.
I don't think you should joke about it. I think it would be stunning.
Yeah.
It would be beyond stunning.
Well, I mean, that's of course one of the things that we are up against, is with it being a voluntary project, there isn't the resources, the money to take this project to a new level. So one of the things we have talked about is, you know, I'm working with the Royal Danish Ballet. It's like we could put on some kind of a performance in honour of them, and then some of the dancers are like, well, let's get them up and let's do something together. And I mean, we joke about it, but yeah, maybe it's not such a silly idea. I don't know.
It's not at all. Is there a message that you want to get out either to Pilates instructors or anyone interested in working with returning soldiers who are injured, or even a message to the soldiers who are returning?
I think as far as the Pilates instructors go, I know from myself that when I was approached about this project, I was so overwhelmed that I almost said no, and I look back at that and I'm like, oh, God, thank God I didn't say no. What a 2.5-year journey this has been. I have learnt so much, and I am on, this is such a crazy journey, and I feel so privileged to have done this journey with them, and to see these, you know, I'm a ballet dancer. I've been on stage and performed for thousands of people. It doesn't even begin to compare to the buzz of working with these guys when you see a moment of success, even if it's just, you know, a moment in their eye, or the difference between someone who's in a wheelchair suddenly walking in with crutches. It's just, it is the most rewarding, amazing feeling you could ever experience. And I think that people shouldn't be afraid of just wanting to help, because there is so much, we have so much knowledge as Pilates instructors, and this kind of, once somebody experiences this, their world's turned upside down. They don't have the messages from their feet to tell them where their body is in space. And this is what Pilates was actually started. This is how it was created. Was on World War I patients, on soldiers, exactly. So I feel like we're almost giving it back to them, exactly.
That's pretty great.
And there is so much. The equipment, the vocabulary within Pilates is quite literally made for this population of people. So
quite literally.
So if you have that foundation in your hand, and then you have the imagination and the passion and the want, then anything's possible. And I'm really realizing that as I go along.
You've been doing amazing work.
Thank you so much.
Really fabulous. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
We have been speaking with Jojo Bowman. She is a professional ballet dancer and certified Pilates instructor working at the Royal Danish Ballet Gym with returning soldiers from Afghanistan with polytraumatic injuries. Thanks again.
Pleasure.
It's been really great.